So right now we've got Redux and we've got React and we've got an application. Again, we're not really hitting a backend, but we're hitting on all the key points of how we have to work with state management and how Redux makes it easier. Well, one thing that's a disadvantage is that we've got a lot of subscribing and unsubscribing, and we've got this dependency on our store. And we're going to use a library called React Redux, which is going to make this problem a little bit easier to deal with. And let's just sort of demo it with an example here. So I'm going to bring in React Redux. Again, I'm just bringing it in a CDN. Obviously, this is going to be in your Webpack at some point. But just for demonstrating, and just to see that I have it, I'm going to do a console.log React Redux, which is the namespace that I get from this JavaScript file. And I'll refresh, and I'll see what I'm going to end up doing here. There's two things that I'm going to need to use. I'm going to need provider, and I'm going to need connect. Because ideally, what I want to have happen is that React Redux will take care of all of our subscribing and our unsubscribing, and it's going to do it by turning components that we had to make stateful into stateless components. We're going to be able to get back our presentational components by using a higher order function that React Redux provides called connect. So the first thing I'm going to do, let me just do a little destructuring here. And I'm going to say I want to bring in provider and connect, and I want to get this from this object, React Redux. And I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to say that I have a provider, and all the provider needs is a store, because it has to know, what our Redux store is. This doesn't work without a Redux store, and we have to provide one, and we provide one in the provider. If we do this, this shouldn't end up breaking anything. Can't read provider of undefined. Yes, that's true, because this is just one word, React Redux. And things work the same. As you remember, our store is this basic Redux store over here where its state are basically our items. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to change our nav. And I'm going to make all of this go away. It's going to seem a little strange. But what I'm going to do here, and just to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to call this nav. And this is just going to be a pure presentational component. So this is going to end up returning these two links, and the only thing it needs, it's going to end up needing the items from my store, and they're not magically, but they are going to get passed in here. And the way that they're going to end up getting passed in here is that I no longer have a nav component, but I'm going to create one. And the way that I'm going to create one is I'm going to say my nav component, and I'm going to end up connecting. And I'm going to pass in my nav component. Now, what this gives me the ability to do is that it's going to give me the ability to say which properties of my store are going to get passed to the nav. And what I want to do is I want to pass items, which is the state of my store. And I could do that with a function. This function is going to get called. We don't call it. When we call connect, this gets called. And it'll get called when our store ends up changing. And it's going to end up passing in the state. And I'm just going to go over here, and I'm going to say, hey, look, when this happens, I want to return items. And items are basically my state, because the only thing my store has is a state, and all that is an array of items. And if I do that, this should actually work. Connect is not a function, and let's just make sure we have that right. I think I did this a little bit too far down the line here. So let's just bring this stuff up. And again, this is where Webpack would make life a little bit easier. Let's just come up here, and right at the beginning, we'll do our destructuring to make that error go away. So now we've got our nav, and our nav is working the same way that it was working before. We can do this with our other components as well. So this actually has another component, which is our items. We've got actually two other components. We can deal with the home as well, but let's deal with items. So our game plan is to make all of this go away. We're no longer going to have a render method. this is strictly going to be a const of items, and items is going to have to get past two things. So here we're going to put our return here. Let's move this back. And we're going to get both our items and our destroy item passed in here. Again, we're going to use connect for this. So we're going to get our items. We've actually got our items before. Destroy item is going to be a little bit different because here we want to actually interact with the store. We want to dispatch to the store. And React Redux makes this easy as well. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to copy this. And we'll come down here, and I'm going to make this items. I'm going to wrap around my presentational component of items. This is going to be the same, but there's also another thing that I could end up passing, another function that will end up getting called if I end up passing it. This function will end up getting passed a function. And this function is the dispatch function, which ends up connecting to the store. So these two callback functions, one of them is called the map state to props function. The other one is map dispatch to props. And what this allows us to do is to return another object. Again, these will become props. So if we just went over here and we said destroy item, and I went over here and I said console.log item, and I went over here and I caught this, this is going to end up getting passed to items, and let's catch it as destroy item because that's what I'm passing it as. Let's refresh this, and let's click on an item here, and we'll see that we get the values of the item. So what we can do here is that we have a dispatch method. We don't really have to have any connection directly to the store. Connect takes care of that for us, and we could call destroy, which is going to be a method that dispatches to the store. Again, we know what our store is because we've provided our provider with the store, and the type here is going to be destroy item, and this is going to be the item that we end up passing here. And now, if we do this, we should be able to destroy our item, but let's see, I have this a little bit incorrect. This is dispatch that we're going to call. So dispatch, we're passing in to our store our item that's going to end up getting destroyed. And if we refresh here, we'll see that we can add items and we can end up destroying items. Now the last one is a case that we don't have to put in here. But again, we've got our store floating around here. It'd be great if we didn't have to have that. It would be great if we could just say something along the lines of create item, and we'll end up passing in an item. Let me get rid of one of these. Okay. And again, we're going to want to have, this is already a presentational component, which is fine, but we want to do something like this where we pass in create item. And again, then we don't have dependency on the store. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. This is presentational already, but I'm just going to say, hey, look, you are home. You're now a higher order component. I'm going to use connect. I've got no state that I need to map to prop. So that's always the first parameter, but I do want to use dispatch. And I'll put home in here. And now I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to say that create item is going to be a function. It's going to be passed an item. And here I'm going to call, and dispatch will get passed here because that's how connect works. And I'm going to dispatch, and the type is going to be create item. So you could imagine if there was some Axios calls going on now, you would end up calling them. But once you were done creating your item, you could end up calling this and calling item. And now, this should end up working. This should end up getting passed in here as a prop. So in the end, what it's doing here is that it's taking care of having to have state or having to have a direct connection to the store. Let's just make sure that I don't have some compiler error here. If I click on home, map dispatch to props must return a plain object. Let's just fix that. So here, you just have to remember that you have to do this. So if we go over here, we could end up doing this, and we're returning this. That should make, because it was barking at us, hey, look, you really need to return a regular object. And now I can do this. So what are the real advantages? What's the big takeaway? Well, if we do a comparison of our code, we'll see a lot of red that ends up disappearing and a little bit of green. But mainly, we're really getting rid of a lot of code, not having to run about having a real dependency upon the store, having to subscribe and to unsubscribe. And it's going to make maintaining our application a little bit easier.